Welcome to the Wired for Success podcast, your show for ambitious, mission-driven entrepreneurs who understand that there's more to entrepreneurship than finding the latest flash-in-the-pan strategies, who understand that in order to build your empire, you need a solid foundation. I wholeheartedly believe that entrepreneurship is the biggest self-development journey you can be on, and it's my mission to help you make that journey easier. I help you transition from a struggling, overwhelmed, and overworked entrepreneur to the relaxed and confident CEO and conscious creator of your dream life that you are meant to be. In this show, I bring together the very best from science, self-development, and entrepreneurship to set you up for sustainable success. I share my own experiences and knowledge as a molecular biologist and mindset coach for high-achieving entrepreneurs, and I interview other top scientists, coaches, and entrepreneurs so that you can get all the expert tips and strategies to help you trust yourself more, worry less, make better decisions, be more productive, stay focused and organized, and build your legacy. Hi, I'm Claudia Garbutt, the scientist and mindset coach behind the show, and you're listening to the Wired for Success podcast. Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Wired for Success podcast, your show for ambitious, mission-driven entrepreneurs who are ready to turn their fears into their fuel, build their legacy, and enjoy the journey. My amazing guest today is Dana Pharant, a speaker, author, coach, and trainer who has an incredible and rather unlikely success story to share with us today. For the first 18 years of her life, she grew up in the Jehovah's Witness cult, where she experienced lots of different types of abuse. And I can only imagine how tough that must have been. So I find it all the more astonishing that she managed to transform those experiences into something super empowering and positive. Her healing journey led her to become a dominatrix. And yes, you heard that right. And integrating those new experiences and transferring them to a business context allowed her to build a seven-figure business. Now, if that's not a remarkable story of transformation, I don't know what is. So welcome, Dana, and thank you so much for taking the time to be on my show today.
Oh, thank you so much. This is fantastic. I've been excited about coming on your show. I love the title of it in itself, Wired for Success. It's so cool because we get to, geek out on a little bit of the neuroscience, but also the success factors. So looking forward to this.
Yay! So Dana, I'd love to start by asking you just to tell us about your epiphany moment. When did you realize that you could turn your experiences of childhood abuse and then being a dominatrix into a business model to help others?
Okay, so I need to give a little bit of background. Bear with me while I go through the story. So as you said, I grew up in a cult. I went through various types of abuse. So when I left the cult, I ended up going through all kinds of different healing modalities. I, went to therapy, I went to group therapy. I, started to explore all the different, neuro-linguistic programming and various, different modalities that were out there. And then I was intrigued to, explore the kink world. So the BDSM, I think 50 Shades of Grey, if you still don't know what we're talking about. And, I was drawn for that for my personal endeavors, but it was there that I experienced this incredible transformation because we're able to craft out a scene. And I had some really amazing people that allowed me to reenact the abuse and then create a different outcome. And of course, that imprints in the body. It imprints really strongly. So that was a big part of what prompted me to become a dominatrix. I wanted to take other people on this healing journey because at the core, I'm a healer. And, so I learned all of the tools and took many people through that transformation, and eventually found that, there's a lot of people that in the business world that I wanted to take on this transformation, but they didn't want to go to the dungeon for some strange reason. I don't know. It's not for everybody. So, concurrent to that, in my personal life, I was running a 7-figure business, and we hit, the trifecta of catastrophes, and the business ended up going through a restructuring. So we went bankrupt, and I, built it back up again. And so that 4 months of restructuring gave me a chance to really look hardcore at what was going on. And what I realized in that time is that here I had all this, power and strength as a dominatrix in my personal life. And then on the business side of it, I wasn't bringing that in because, of course, there's this desire to want to segregate my personal life from my business life. And as a result, I left all the power and the leadership. So going through the transformation for the 4 months of turning the business around made me realize that I needed to bring that energy in. I needed to bring in who I was as a dominatrix on an energetic level, not bringing the whips in, obviously, to work. Although it might have been fun, but but bringing that in, and really integrating it in was what was missing for myself in business. And I started to look at other women in business and started to realize, that's a really big part of what is missing is what I call the inner dominatrix, that energy of who you need to become to really be a strong leader in your business.
I love that. That's such an empowering story. So maybe we can dig a little deeper here, and you can talk in a little more detail about this inner dominatrix model and how it works. So is it based on setting your proper boundaries and being vulnerable in front of people, that kind of thing? Or what do you bring together to help those people?
Yeah, it's great. It's a kind of a big picture. So we have a lot of layers in here. We have the pieces like you speak about, being vulnerable, being willing to really show up authentically, stand in this place of quiet confidence, to be willing to be the expert, which requires us to be vulnerable as well in order to really hold that leadership space. Then there's also layers of, being willing to be judged, because as we rise up in our business, we're going to be judged because you're going to be more visible. And as you're more visible, there's more people saying things, good or bad. And, all of these layers together of being really willing to stand firm in who we are and, be kind of like Teflon from the rest of the world, in that all of their, ideas of who we are can just kind of bounce off and not stick to us. And so we stay firm on that course of who are we, who are we serving, picking the lane. All of those pieces all come down to having that mindset of being really aligned and centered in who you are.
Yes, the alignment piece is so important. And I found that this kind of shadow work that we're talking about, where we confront ourselves with those parts of ourselves that we really disapprove of, that we want to go away, that we don't want to face. And I find that when we go and actually do this work, this is so helpful. And it always reminds me of this. It's one of my favorite quotes by Carl Gustav Jung, who said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And I found that to be so profoundly true that it does. It's so amazing. It's just so amazing that when we start to open our eyes to the things that we don't want to see, that's where the transformation happens, right? And when we do this kind of work, it's so important that we are kind to ourselves, and that we really leave shame and guilt and all these difficult emotions that we face them, but then we also leave them behind to do this work. So can you talk a little bit about that, about the guilt and the shame and being kind to oneself in the process?
Yeah, I love Carl Jung's work, and I'm a huge fan of all the shadow work and, embracing our dark side, embracing those pieces. And for me, I think it really comes down to like a central belief or foundation of that. What if we operated from this space of that there's nothing inherently right or wrong or good or bad, that these are concepts that we put labels on in order to create judgment. And it's that kind of level of judgment where if we have to label something as good or bad, even when we talk about, emotions like guilt and shame, when we label them as bad emotions,
Mm-hmm.
then we end up, locking them into our system. If we don't label them as bad and we're sitting there and going, oh, interesting.
Interesting.
Shame is there again. Okay, hey shame, what do you here to show me? What's the journey? What's the invitation? And that's the big thing that I find is that when we stop needing to put a really definitive label of this is good, this is bad, I need this, I don't need this, we constrict ourselves in our possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment that we say, okay, well, what if I could embrace shame and guilt in the same way that I embrace joy and happiness? And not that we need it to stay, but, because like happiness is kind of fleeting as well. But I think if we took this on to say, okay, well, there's a level of this is cool, this is great, having that perspective. And I know that's like, it's kind of mind bending for a lot of people to think about, oh, I'm just going to embrace my shame. Yay, shame is here again. This is awesome. Right. But there is, this is kind of advanced, consciousness work and the deeper shadow work. Right. But that's the piece that I want to hold out to people is that idea that it's like, what if we stop making our emotions wrong
Mm.
or right, and we can make space for them to be part of our experience?
Yes, so true. I love that. So I like to call this kind of approach the kind curiosity approach. So you're being
Mm-hmm.
kind to yourself, but you also approach it from a like a scientist. So you're curious about what you find out. So you don't go in there saying, okay, I want this, I don't want that. You're just approaching it like a scientist and see, okay, this is my kind of like my experiment, and I'm curious to see what happens or what results I will get. And
Mm-hmm.
this is something that I find really helpful. But maybe you have some more tips to share with our listeners who are having a hard time dealing with this self-judgment and this very harsh inner critic. So in your opinion, what's the best way to get out of that constant negative self-talk?
I think I always come back around to the very first tool that I give people is along the concept of our energy. So our energy field is not just in our physical body, but it sits outside of our body. And for most of us, we pull that energy field in really close to us, thinking that we need to protect ourselves. But if you take that energy field and you allow it to float out, so if you kind of give your energy field a color, and then you just see it getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, right? We just go all the way out. And ideally, you're just going to gradually go out to the size of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
When you have that much space, you start to give yourself perspective. But also, and this is where it's really critical for me, I find, is that when we allow ourselves lots of space, you start to unhook from what's going on with other people.
Right.
So the first layer for me of unhooking of the self-judgment is unhooking from the judgment that you're picking up from other people.
Mm-hmm.
And the massive amounts of emotion and distraught and angst and anxiety, all of those pieces, I think the vast majority of that is that we are, kind of spongy from the rest of the world. And so if we expand out, it allows us to just let that drop off. And then we can deal with what is actually ours. It's a huge shortcut as far as I see it, in that, if you're going to do your inner work, let's not try to fix the rest of the world through yourself. Unhook from their crazy, and then we can look at what's left over. And so that is really the first skill that I really strongly invite people to work with, is constantly allowing your energy field to expand out. And it's just a matter of visualizing it going out, and it does. It's
Mm-hmm.
that easy.
Oh, thank you. That's a great tip. And I think it's really important what you said, because for me as an empath, for example, I feel a lot of things. So I feel people's emotions. And sometimes it's very hard for me to distinguish whether it's actually my own emotion that I'm feeling at the moment, or if I'm just picking up on someone else's emotions in that moment. So that's a very good tip, and I will definitely try that.
Excellent. Let me know how it goes. Because here's the thing is that we have, over 7 billion people on the planet. If they're all going through angst and emotion, what are the odds if you're, an empath, which a lot of us are, what are the odds that the majority of what you're feeling is not yours?
Yeah, sure. Exactly. And also really just a matter of taking the time to sit down and be aware of what's going on and asking yourself these questions. Is this true for me? Is that what I'm feeling, or is it just, what I'm picking up from my environment?
Absolutely.
Another thing that I saw you mention in a couple of posts, I think it was on your Instagram, was that trusting your intuition to grow your business. And I wanted to talk about that because it's something that I've found can be a little bit confusing for people, because they misinterpret their anxious gut feeling as a sign of their intuition not to take the next logical steps because it doesn't feel good. When in fact, what they are experiencing is just stepping outside their comfort zone, which is by definition a scary and uncomfortable thing to do. So is that something that you have experienced in your work too? And how do you address this?
Oh, great question. Great question. So I'm actually in the midst of creating the Badass Intuition course, which goes along with the book that I wrote by the same title. And in the very first module, I go into what I call the 3 types of intuition. So 2 are, genuine intuition. And the third is the mistaken intuition that you're talking about, where our discomfort, which I call the subconscious brain, which always lies to us, right? The subconscious brain loves to keep us in the familiar. Now, I don't like calling it a comfort zone. I got a whole rant on that, but ask me about that later. But our subconscious brain, like I said, likes to keep us in the familiar. It wants to do that. So it fires off this gut response of fear anytime you're approached with something different. And so that is not intuition. That's just a stimulus response situation happening. Now, the 2 types of intuition that we want to be tapping into, one is the type that Malcolm Gladwell talks about in his book Blink, which is not really an intuition at all, but just a learned behavior response. So that's our, accumulated knowledge popping up of, I know this, like, yes, it's that. I can't quite put my finger on why, but it's that. That's more of a, accumulated knowledge. And then the actual true intuition is being able to tap into what I call our higher selves, or the collective consciousness. And that's a skill that can be learned. And of course, I cover that in the book. But basically, what you want to do is you need to train yourself to start to tune in to the answer. So I get people to start with just being able to do simple muscle testing, and then we expand that out into getting an intuitive feel from a kinesthetic kind of feeling, and asking yes and no questions. Very simple, very clear yes and no questions. Something like, body, do you want a glass of water? That's a simple, clear question. And then you just get the yes and no. The process of doing that, of building that training, allows you to drop deeper and deeper into trusting your intuition. So the program, which I'll give people the link to, or the book anyway, is a 6-week program that really drops you in deeper and deeper into being able to actually hear your intuition. And that's where the amazing inspiration can drop in, and we get the answer that may not be comfortable, but will move us in the direction that we want to be going in.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I really think we have to raise our level of self-awareness just to realize whether it's our fear talking or our intuition that we're hearing, and to start making our decisions based on what we want to achieve rather than what we want to avoid. And I think that's where intuition really comes into its own. So, of course, making decisions based on what we want to create rather than what we want to avoid requires surrendering to uncertainty and being willing to put yourself out there and to make mistakes and accept that you will eventually fail to achieve some of your goals, or you will constantly fail to achieve some of your goals, and just to be okay with that. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So what did it feel like for you when you started your own entrepreneurial journey? So did you always have the courage to lead with your past experiences, or what made you trust that everything would be okay?
So I'm kind of an anomaly. I say that I do personal development as an extreme sport. And for me, business is a personal development tool. So, I do approach this very, very differently. And I think that's part of what's allowed me to step in to just try things out. It's like, oh, okay, let me try this on. Let me see what happens. Oh, that didn't quite work out the way I thought. Oh, okay, let me try this way. Mm-hmm. And, I kind of like Thomas Edison, testing out everything until I find the one that works. I realize that most people are not wired that way. And so where I suggest for a lot of my clients is this concept, again, like when we lean on that concept of what if there's no right or wrong, then there's no failure. It's impossible to have an actual failure. Mm-hmm. You have something that didn't create the outcome that you thought. Yeah. But, when you put out that bigger plan, and for me, I like aligning myself with universe or spirit, God, however you want to label it. And to be looking at, it's like, okay, what's the big master plan, right? What is it like way in the future? And often the thing that needs to change, it's faster if it gets destroyed than if we, slowly change it. So for instance, like my business, it was faster for me to have that just fall apart and then move into what I'm doing now with the inner dominatrix. Like the universe saw that. It was faster for that to happen than for me to try to untangle from it and, work all those pieces out. So sometimes our quote unquote failures are a way to actually propel us closer and faster to our actual goal, not the short term, little control freak thing that we think that we need.
True. True. Yeah, if you had to sum it up in, say, one or two sentences, what was the critical lesson that you learned that helped you to follow the joy and lead from the heart instead of letting fear and shame and guilt dictate your life?
I would say that for me, it doesn't work any other way.
Right. So
I really had no choice. It's when I get into my head and try to control things and I'm not surrendered, it just is like complete catastrophe. Now, I'm an extreme case because I'm a slow learner. So, but when I follow my joy, when I'm playing, when I'm having fun, then magic shows up. It's like it's easy, it flows, and things drop in.
Love that. Last but not least, I would love to hear your big, bold goals. So in life, what's your vision that you're working towards? What do you want to achieve?
It's very nebulous. So I am on a very strong spiritual journey. It has become more of a spiritual journey. So my goal is ultimate surrender to the flow and the nudges, and doing absolutely everything through surrender and intuition. So I'm not setting goals as far as like I'm going to have this or that. On a smaller level, I've put out to the universe that I would really like to get a piece of property so that I can set up and run my mini retreats that are happening where we're dropping people into expanded consciousness. And so I'm like, can I have that? Can I have it now? Can I have it now? How about now? Playing and dancing.
Yes, name it and claim it. Now, before we end the interview, I have just one last question for you, and that is just, what's the best way for someone in our audience to connect with you and learn more about what you do and about your journey?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I would suggest people head over to inner dominatrix.com. Grab a copy of the Badass Intuition. That's a great place to start. And then I am the only Dana Pharant in the world. So if you Google me, you will find me. So it's Pharant. Feel free to look me up, hook me up on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dana, for this lovely interview. And thank you so much for sharing all these tips with our listeners.
It's been a delight. Thank you so much, Claudia.
You're welcome. Talk to you soon. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Wired for Success podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please take a sec to rate and review my show. It would mean the world to me because you would help me reach more entrepreneurs like yourself who would love this show. If you'd like to learn more about creating a widely successful business without sacrificing your health, relationships, or sanity, make sure to stick around and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And if you think, heck yes, I want to listen to each and every one of these amazing episodes, but my day just doesn't have enough hours, well, if that's you, I have something special for you. To help me spread the word about this podcast, I've created a contest and I'm giving away some super cool prizes for those of you who take a sec to subscribe, rate, and review the show. And one of the amazing prizes that you can win is to watch me create my brand new Get Your Life Back Productivity Powerhouse course that teaches entrepreneurs how to win back 1 to 2 hours of precious time each day so that they can do all the things they love. I'll later sell that course for 997 euros, but as a thank you for supporting my podcast launch, you'll get to watch as I create it for free. And just like that, you will have enough time to listen to each and every Wired for Success episode. Woohoo! To find out more about the contest and the other amazing prizes, go to www.wiredforsuccess.solutions/launch-contest. See you next time.